A billionaire divorced her, thinking she was poor. A year later, he saw her at a business gala, sitting in the president's chair and holding twins. A very beautiful, heartwarming and passionate love story. Don't forget to like, subscribe and comment, because it gives me confidence and gives me courage to write more powerful stories. Let's start with love. Some women are forged in fire, but Wanda Peter was forged in abandonment, humiliation, and the cold realization that the man who promised forever couldn't even give her a single year of loyalty. But before the fire came the warmth. Before the destruction came a love so pure it felt like breathing. Wanda still remembered the exact moment she saw Adam Salt across that crowded conference hall. Not because he was the most handsome man there, though his dark hair and sharp jawline certainly turned heads. Not because of his confident stride or expensive suit. She remembered because when their eyes met, something in her chest shifted, like a lock clicking open after years of being sealed shut. The medical research conference stretched across an entire weekend. Hundreds of doctors and researchers gathered to discuss breakthrough treatments and experimental protocols. Wanda attended alone, as she always did, registered under her mother's maiden name rather than her father's empire. Beta Pharmaceuticals was a name that commanded respect and attention, but Wanda had learned early that attention came with prices she refused to pay. Men saw dollar signs, women saw competition. Nobody saw her. So she became invisible by choice, working in a small research lab, living in a modest apartment, driving a practical car, wearing clothes that whispered rather than screamed. Her father had built an empire worth billions before his death, and her mother had carefully stewarded it until passing it to Wanda's control. But Wanda wanted something her money could never buy, someone who loved her for the woman she was, not the fortune she carried. Adam approached her during the coffee break, holding 2 cups, offering one with a smile that seemed almost shy. "You look like you need this more than I do," he said, nodding toward the cup. That last presentation on cellular regeneration was dense enough to require caffeine intervention. Wanda accepted the coffee, studying him. Most men at these conferences either ignored her completely or hit on her with rehearsed lines. Adam did neither. His eyes met hers with genuine curiosity, not calculation. "Dense is generous," she replied, allowing herself a small smile. "I'm pretty sure he lost everyone after slide 3. Slide 3. Adam laughed, a warm sound that made something flutter in her stomach. "You're kind. I was lost at the title." They talked through the entire break, then somehow found themselves sitting together for the next presentation, passing notes like teenagers about the particularly boring speakers. When the conference ended that evening, Adam asked if she wanted dinner, and Wanda said yes without hesitation. Without the usual careful analysis, she applied to every decision. Dinner became breakfast the next morning. Breakfast became a walk through the city. The walk became another dinner, and suddenly the conference weekend ended, but they didn't want to say goodbye. "I live here," Wanda told him as they stood outside her apartment building. The Sunday evening air warm around them. "In this city, I mean. I work at Stellar Research Lab. I'm supposed to fly back tomorrow," Adam said, his hand finding hers, fingers intertwining like they'd been doing this for years instead of hours. "But I don't want to." "That's crazy, right? We just met." "Completely crazy," Wanda agreed, her heart hammering against her ribs. "You should probably go." "I should," he said, stepping closer. "But I won't. Not if you don't want me to." She didn't want him to. That night, they stayed up until dawn, talking about everything and nothing. Adam told her about his family's company, how they'd been struggling lately, how he felt pressure to save something that might not want to be saved. Wanda told him about her research, her passion for finding treatments that could actually help people, not just make profits. She didn't mention the billions in her trust fund. She didn't mention that she could buy his family's struggling company 100 times over without noticing the expense. Adam stayed. He found a research position at a local hospital, moved into an apartment across town, and their relationship bloomed like something out of a fairy tale. They spent evenings cooking terrible meals together, laughing when the smoke alarm went off. Weekends hiking trails outside the city, his hand always finding hers on the difficult climbs. Late nights tangled together in sheets, learning each other's bodies with reverent attention. "I love you," Adam whispered one night, his fingers tracing patterns on her bare shoulder. "I know it's fast, but I don't care. I've never felt like this about anyone. I love you too," Wanda breathed, and meant it with every cell in her body. Stay forever." "Forever," he promised, kissing her so deeply she forgot to breathe. The proposal came 6 months later, nothing elaborate or showy. Just Adam on one knee in her tiny apartment kitchen, holding a simple ring he'd saved for, his eyes wet with emotion. "Marry me," he said, voice shaking. "I know I don't have much. I know you deserve someone who can give you the world. But I swear I'll spend every day trying to make you happy. I'll love you until my last breath. Marry me, Wanda." She pulled him up, kissing him hard, tasting salt from both their tears. "Yes," she said against his mouth. Yes. They married in a small ceremony with just a handful of friends, no family on either side. Adam's parents sent a cold message about being too busy. Wanda didn't invite her mother, knowing the woman would accidentally reveal too much about their wealth. It didn't matter. Nothing mattered, except the way Adam looked at her when she walked down the makeshift aisle in a simple white dress, like she was the most precious thing in existence. "I'm the luckiest man alive," he whispered as they swayed together for their first dance. "No band or DJ, just a playlist from someone's phone. I don't deserve you." "You do," Wanda promised, resting her head against his chest, listening to his heartbeat. "We deserve each other. We deserve this happiness." The first year of marriage was everything Wanda had ever dreamed of and never believed she'd find. They were partners in every sense, supporting each other's work, celebrating small victories, comforting each other through setbacks. Adam brought her coffee every morning exactly how she liked it. Wanda left little notes in his jacket pockets for him to find during the day. They made love like they were discovering something sacred, gentle and fierce by turns, always ending wrapped around each other like neither could bear even an inch of separation. "What did I do to deserve you?" Adam asked one night, his hands splayed across her stomach, both of them drowsy and satisfied. "You saw me," Wanda said simply, covering his hand with hers. "Really saw me. Not what you wanted me to be. Just me." "I'll always see you," he promised, pulling her closer. "Always, baby. You're my whole world." She believed him. God help her. She believed every word. Their anniversary came. A quiet celebration at home because neither of them needed expensive restaurants or grand gestures. Wanda cooked his favorite meal, only burning the edges slightly. Adam gave her a bracelet with their wedding date engraved inside, kissing her wrist after he clasped it on. "To forever," he toasted, raising his wine glass. "To us." "To us," Wanda echoed, clinking her glass against his, thinking that life couldn't possibly get better than this moment, this man, this love that felt solid and unshakable. She was wrong. Everything was about to shatter. Chapter 2. The Poison of Doubt. The change didn't come all at once. It crept in slowly, like frost spreading across glass, beautiful and deadly in its progression. Adam started working later. Coming home after Wanda had already eaten dinner alone, the food she'd prepared growing cold on the stove. At first he apologized, kissing her forehead with genuine regret, explaining about important meetings and unexpected complications. Wanda understood. She knew about demanding work schedules. She reheated his plate without complaint and sat with him while he ate, telling him about her day, even though exhaustion pulled at his features. But the apologies grew shorter. Then they stopped coming at all. "You don't understand the pressure I'm under," Adam said one evening when Wanda gently asked if everything was all right. His tone carried an edge she'd never heard before, sharp enough to cut. "My family is depending on me. The whole company is struggling, and I'm supposed to fix it somehow." "I know it's hard," Wanda said carefully, reaching for his hand across the table. But we can talk about it. That's what marriage is, right? Supporting each other. He pulled his hand away, the gesture small but devastating. You wouldn't understand, he said, not meeting her eyes. You work in a lab doing research that might help someone someday. I'm trying to save jobs, livelihoods, my family's legacy. It's different. The dismissal of her work stung, but Wanda swallowed the hurt, telling herself he was stressed, that this wasn't really him talking. Adam's mother started visiting their apartment. Margaret Salt was a thin woman with sharp features and sharper words, always impeccably dressed, always carrying an air of judgment like expensive perfume. She'd never approved of the marriage, had made that clear from the beginning, but now her disapproval became vocal, poisonous. Such a small place, Margaret said during one visit, her gaze sweeping their modest living room with barely concealed disdain. Adam, darling, surely you could afford something more appropriate for a man in your position. We like it here, Wanda said firmly, but Margaret's eyes slid over her as if she hadn't spoken. Your father and I had connections, resources, Margaret continued, speaking only to her son. We moved in circles that mattered. But you married for love. She said the word like it was something distasteful. How romantic. And how impractical. Adam said nothing in Wanda's defense. Just nodded along, absorbing his mother's poison like it was medicine. The visits became more frequent. Margaret bringing articles about eligible socialites, mentioning daughters of business associates, talking constantly about money and connections and influence. Always while Wanda sat right there, invisible, erased. The Crane family is looking to invest, Margaret said one afternoon, her voice casual but calculated. Their daughter Lilith is accomplished, educated, comes from excellent breeding. She'd be quite an asset to someone ambitious. Mother, Adam said, but his tone lacked conviction. I'm just saying, darling, that sometimes we make choices with our hearts that our heads should have vetoed. Margaret's gaze finally landed on Wanda, cold and assessing. Some women are suited to be wives of important men. Others are simply pleasant distractions. Wanda stood abruptly, hands shaking with rage and hurt. I need to go to the lab. She left without waiting for Adam to respond, without waiting to see if he'd defend her because she was terrified he wouldn't. The distance between them grew like a chasm. Adam stopped touching her casually, no more hands on her waist as he passed, no more absent kisses on her temple while she cooked. In bed he turned away, citing exhaustion, stress, headaches. The man who had once made love to her like she was precious and necessary, now treated her like a roommate he tolerated. Wanda tried everything. She dressed up for him, wearing the lingerie he used to love removing, with reverent hands. He barely glanced at her before turning back to his laptop. She cooked his favorite meals. He ate mechanically, phone in hand, responding to emails. She suggested weekend trips, date nights, anything to recapture what they'd had. I don't have time for that, he said, irritation flashing across his face. Some of us have real responsibilities, Wanda. We can't all play in laboratories pretending our work matters. Each word was a blade. Each dismissal a small death. Wanda started feeling sick in the mornings. At first, she thought it was stress, her body reacting to the slow disintegration of her marriage. But when the nausea persisted, accompanied by exhaustion and a strange sensitivity to smells, she bought a pregnancy test with trembling hands. 2 pink lines, unmistakable, impossible, beautiful. She was pregnant, carrying Adam's child, their child. The baby they'd talked about having someday, when the time was right, when they were ready to expand their perfect little family. Wanda pressed a hand to her still flat stomach, tears streaming down her face. This should be the happiest moment. This should be the thing that brings them back together, reminds Adam of their love, their commitment, their future. But looking around their apartment at the growing distance between them, at Adam's increasingly cold demeanor, at the way he now looked at her like she was an obstacle rather than a partner, Wanda felt fear grip her heart. She decided to wait. To tell him after things improved, after he remembered who they were to each other, after the man she married came back from wherever he'd gone. She waited 3 weeks, then 4, then 6. Adam came home later and later, stopped coming home some nights at all, texting that he was staying at his parents' house because work required an early start. His mother's visits became daily invasions, her commentary increasingly cruel. "Still no children," Margaret observed one afternoon, her smile sharp as glass. "Perhaps that's for the best. The bloodlines shouldn't be mixed after all." The racist undertone wasn't even subtle anymore. Wanda sat frozen, waiting for Adam to defend her, to throw his mother out, to remember that he'd chosen her, married her, loved her. Adam said nothing, just stared at his phone like the conversation wasn't happening. Wanda's hand drifted to her stomach, protecting the secret growing there, the child whose father was becoming a stranger. "I think you should leave," Wanda said quietly, voice steady despite her shaking hands. Margaret stood gracefully, gathering her designer purse. "Of course, dear. I have a lunch appointment anyway, with the Cranes. Such a lovely family. Lilith asked about you, Adam. She's single again, you know." After she left, silence pressed heavy between husband and wife. "Why do you let her talk to me like that?" Wanda asked, hating the pleading note in her voice. Adam finally looked up, and Wanda barely recognized the cold assessment in his eyes. "Maybe she has a point," he said slowly. "Maybe I did marry too quickly, without thinking about practicalities. About what I needed versus what I wanted. What are you saying?" "I'm saying I'm tired, Wanda. Tired of struggling. Tired of having a wife who doesn't understand the world I'm trying to survive in. Tired of pretending this is enough." The words hit like physical blows. Wanda stood there, one hand unconsciously protecting her belly, the other gripping the counter for support. "I love you," she whispered. "Doesn't that matter?" Adam's expression flickered, something like guilt or regret crossing his features before hardening again. "Love doesn't pay bills," he said, and walked into the bedroom, closing the door between them. Wanda stood alone in the kitchen, feeling their baby flutter for the first time, a tiny movement like butterfly wings against her palm, while her marriage died around her in slow, agonizing increments. Wanda stood alone in the kitchen, feeling their baby flutter for the first time, a tiny movement like butterfly wings against her palm, while her marriage died around her in slow, agonizing increments. She threw the newspaper in the trash and booked a one-way flight to another city, where her mother's company headquarters waited, where her real life could finally begin, where Adam Salt would never find her again. But that day wasn't today. Today, she just held on and survived. He'd thrown away everything that mattered, and getting it back might be impossible. Adam didn't have answers. He only had determination and the growing certainty that he'd spend the rest of his life trying to fix this, even if it killed him. His children existed. That fact couldn't be erased or ignored, and Adam would spend the rest of his life trying to be worthy of them, even knowing he might never succeed. And Adam understood that this might be all he ever got. Supervised hours twice a week with children who might never truly accept him, and eternal punishment from the woman whose life he'd destroyed. It was far less than he deserved to hope for, but it was something, and he'd take something over nothing, even if it killed him slowly. Wanda didn't respond, just closed the door gently, leaving Adam standing on her porch, feeling something dangerously close to hope for the first time in years. Chapter 3. The Death of Forever. Adam came home early on a Thursday, which should have been strange enough to alarm her. He'd barely spent an evening at home in weeks, preferring his parents' house or late nights at the office or anywhere that wasn't here, wasn't with her. But Wanda had been folding laundry, her body exhausted from the pregnancy she carried in secret. And when she heard his key in the lock, something in her chest lifted with pathetic hope. Maybe he'd remembered. Maybe today was the day he came back to her. He walked in carrying a briefcase she didn't recognize, wearing a suit that looked newly tailored, expensive, His face was set in hard lines, no warmth anywhere in his expression. He didn't kiss her hello, didn't ask about her day, just set the briefcase on the kitchen table and opened it with steady hands. "We need to talk," he said, pulling out papers. "Legal documents." Wanda's eyes caught on the header before her brain could process the meaning. "Petition for dissolution of marriage." "What is this?" she asked, though she knew. God, she knew. "Divorce papers," Adam said flatly, no emotion in his voice, like he was discussing the weather or what to have for dinner. "I need you to sign them." Wanda's hand instinctively moved to her stomach, still flat enough that no one would notice the life growing inside. She pulled it away quickly, pressing both palms against the table edge instead, gripping hard enough that her knuckles went white. "You want a divorce," she repeated, her voice sounding distant to her own ears. "I need a divorce," Adam corrected, still not looking at her, shuffling the papers into order. "This isn't working, Wanda. It hasn't been working for a while now." "We've been married barely over a year," Wanda said, desperation creeping into her tone despite her efforts to stay calm. "We made vows. We promised forever." Now he looked at her, and the coldness in his eyes froze her blood. "I made a mistake," he said simply. "I married you thinking you were enough, thinking love was enough, but it's not." "You're not," the words landed like punches. Wanda felt each one impact her chest, her throat, her heart. "What are you talking about? I've done everything you asked. I've supported you, taken care of you, been here for you even when you stopped being here for me." "Exactly," Adam said, his voice rising with frustration. "You've been here, just here, in this tiny apartment, working your meaningless research job, contributing nothing to my life except dead weight." "Dead weight?" Wanda's voice cracked. "Is that what I am to you?" "Yes," he said, and the casual cruelty of it stole her breath. "My family's company is dying, and I married someone who can't help, who has no connections, no money, no influence. You're ordinary, Wanda, painfully, desperately ordinary. And I need extraordinary." She could tell him right now. Could reveal that she was worth more than his family's entire failing company 100 times over. Could show him bank statements and trust fund documents and make him choke on his words. But pride and heartbreak sealed her lips. If he wanted to leave her thinking she was ordinary and worthless, then let him. Let him live with that choice. "There's someone else," Wanda said, not a question. She'd known somewhere deep down, had felt the truth in how he'd stopped touching her, stopped seeing her. "Lilith Crane," Adam admitted without shame. "We've been seeing each other for a few weeks. Her family wants to invest in salt industries, help us rebuild. It makes sense, Wanda. She comes from money, understands my world, can actually be an asset instead of a liability." "You're cheating on me," Wanda breathed. The betrayal somehow worse than the divorce itself. "I'm making a practical choice," Adam corrected, his tone matter-of-fact, like he was explaining something obvious to a child. "Love doesn't save companies. Love doesn't pay for the lifestyle I deserve. Love doesn't fix anything. Love is everything," Wanda said, tears finally spilling over despite her best efforts. "Love is why we got married. Love is what we promised each other. We were kids playing house," Adam said dismissively. "I grew up. You stayed ordinary. That's not my fault." He pushed the papers across the table toward her, along with a pen. "Sign them." "I've already signed. My lawyer will file tomorrow. You'll get a small settlement, nothing life-changing, but enough to find a new apartment, start over somewhere. I'm being generous, generous." The word almost made her laugh hysterically. He thought he was being generous while destroying her life, while abandoning the child growing inside her that he didn't even know existed. "Tell him," a voice screamed in her head. "Tell him about the baby. Maybe it will change his mind. Maybe he'll remember who you are to each other." But looking at his cold eyes, his impatient expression, the way he kept checking his watch like this conversation was an inconvenience, keeping him from more important things. Wanda knew the truth. This man didn't love her anymore. Maybe he never really had. He'd loved an idea of her, a fantasy of simple happiness. And now that fantasy had collided with his ambition and lost, If she told him about the baby now, he'd either demand she get rid of it or try to use it to trap her in this dead marriage. Neither option was acceptable. Her child deserved better than a father who saw them as an obligation or a tool. She picked up the pen with shaking hands. "You'll regret this," she said quietly. "Not a threat, just a statement of fact." "I doubt it," Adam replied. "Lilith is everything you're not. Accomplished, connected, beautiful in a way that matters." The racist undertone wasn't lost on Wanda. She was beautiful too. But not in the way Adam's family valued, not in the way that opened society doors and impressed business associates. Her brown skin had never been a problem when it was just the two of them, when love supposedly conquered all. But add money and status and family pressure, and suddenly it became another item on his list of her inadequacies. Wanda signed every page where her lawyer's little sticky arrows indicated. She didn't read the terms, didn't care about settlements or asset division or any of it. She just wanted this over, wanted him gone, wanted to curl up in a ball and scream until her voice gave out. "When are you leaving?" she asked after signing the last page, pushing the stack back across the table. "Now," Adam said, checking his watch again. "I have movers coming tomorrow for my things. You can stay here through the end of the month, then the lease is up. After that, you're on your own." He closed the briefcase with a decisive snap, picked it up and walked toward the door. Wanda sat frozen at the kitchen table, watching the father of her unborn children walk out of her life without looking back. At the door, he paused, and for one desperate second, Wanda thought he might turn around, might see what he was doing, might remember their wedding vows and first kiss and all the promises they'd made. "I really did love you once," he said without turning. "I hope you find someone who can afford to. Someone ordinary like you." Then he was gone. Wanda sat in the silence of their apartment, soon to be just her apartment, temporary shelter before she'd be completely displaced. Her hand finally moved to her stomach, pressing against the slight curve only she could feel, protecting the twins growing inside her that would never know their father. "It's okay," she whispered to them to herself. "We don't need him. We'll be fine. Better than fine. I promise." But the tears that fell onto the divorce papers told a different truth. She wasn't fine. She was shattered. The man she'd loved more than breathing had looked her in the eyes and called her worthless, ordinary, forgettable, had thrown her away like garbage for a woman with better connections and whiter skin. 3 weeks later, Wanda saw the engagement announcement in the society section of the newspaper. Adam Salt and Lilith Crane smiling in expensive clothes at some charity gala, the caption mentioning their upcoming nuptials and the exciting merger of their family interests. They looked perfect together, like they'd been photoshopped into existence. Like Wanda had been nothing but a brief footnote in Adam's journey to this shinier, more acceptable destination. She threw the newspaper in the trash and booked a one-way flight to another city, where her mother's company headquarters waited, where her real life could finally begin, where Adam Salt would never find her again. Chapter 4. Rising from Ashes. The boardroom fell silent when Wanda walked in, and she understood why. She'd been absent from Peter Pharmaceuticals for so long, living her small life under an assumed name, that many of the newer executives had never even met her. They knew her as a ghost, a legend, the founder's daughter who'd disappeared into obscurity after her father's death. Now she stood before them, wearing a designer suit that fit perfectly. Her natural hair styled in elegant twists, her spine straight, despite the exhaustion and heartbreak weighing on her shoulders. She was done hiding, done pretending to be less than she was, done sacrificing herself for men who didn't deserve her sacrifice. "Good morning," she said, her voice carrying authority she didn't know she possessed. "My name is Wanda Peter. I'm your new president, and we have work to do." The transition happened faster than she expected. Her mother had kept a seat warm for her, maintained her inheritance, protected her legacy, even when Wanda had walked away from it. The board accepted her leadership with barely a murmur of resistance. Recognizing her father's brilliance in her eyes, her mother's steel in her voice, Wanda threw herself into the company with ferocious intensity. She worked 16-hour days, reviewing every department, every project, every failing and success. She identified weak points and strengthened them, found inefficiencies and eliminated them, took risks on experimental treatments that other pharmaceutical giants deemed too dangerous or unprofitable. Her pregnancy grew along with the company. She worked through morning sickness, taking meetings with a trash can discreetly positioned beside her desk. She negotiated million-dollar deals while her back ached and her ankles swelled. She gave presentations to international investors with her growing belly hidden behind podiums and strategic clothing. Nobody questioned her. Nobody dared. She was brilliant and terrifying in equal measure. A woman possessed by the need to prove something to a man who would never know. "See me now," she thought during late nights alone in her office, one hand on her expanding stomach. "See what you threw away, Adam. See what you called ordinary." But Adam wasn't there to see. He'd married his socialite, merged his failing company with her family's money, and presumably lived happily in his upgraded world. Wanda learned this through industry gossip, through business publications that mentioned salt industry's minor recovery, through society photos of Adam and Lilith at various galas and benefits. She stopped looking after the first month. It hurt too much, seeing him smile beside another woman, seeing him build the life he'd decided she wasn't good enough to share. Her assistant became her closest confidant. Jessica was a no-nonsense woman who asked no questions about Wanda's pregnancy, simply adjusted schedules around doctor appointments and made sure healthy meals appeared on her desk throughout the day. "You need to rest," Jessica said one evening, finding Wanda still at her desk well after midnight. "You're working yourself to death." "I'm working myself to life," Wanda corrected, not looking up from the research proposal she was reviewing. "Death is what happens when you stop moving." But she knew Jessica was right. The exhaustion had gone beyond normal pregnancy fatigue into something dangerous. Her doctor had warned her about stress, about the risks of carrying twins, about needing to slow down before her body made the decision for her. Wanda finally began working from home more often, conducting meetings via video conference, signing documents that Jessica brought to her penthouse. The apartment was massive and empty, decorated by professionals in sleek modern style that felt like a hotel. No warmth, no personality, no memories of happier times, because there were no happy times here. She spent evenings alone, feeling her babies move inside her, talking to them softly about nothing and everything. "Your father doesn't know about you," she whispered one night. Hands splayed across her belly, where two distinct kicks answered her touch. "He'll never know. That's his loss, not yours. You'll have everything. Love, security, a mother who will burn down the world to protect you. You don't need him. We don't need him." But some nights in the darkest hours before dawn, Wanda cried for what should have been. For doctor appointments she attended alone, where other women had partners to hold their hands during ultrasounds. For nursery furniture she assembled herself, refusing to ask for help, stubbornly independent even as tears blurred her vision. For the future she'd imagined where Adam held their children, where they were a family, where love hadn't died such a brutal death. The babies came early, several weeks before their due date. Wanda woke at 3 a.m. to cramping that quickly escalated into labor pains that stole her breath. She called Jessica, called her doctor, called for a car, all while contractions ripped through her body with increasing intensity. The hospital room was cold and clinical. Nurses moved efficiently around her, checking monitors, adjusting IVs, speaking in calm tones that did nothing to ease her terror. Jessica held her hand through the worst of it, but Jessica wasn't Adam. Jessica wasn't the father of these children. Jessica wasn't the man who should have been there, supporting her, telling her she was strong and beautiful and doing amazing. "You're doing great," the doctor said. positioned between Wanda's legs, hands ready. "One more push for the first baby." Wanda pushed, screaming through the pain, feeling her body tear itself apart to bring new life into the world. The first cry pierced the air, tiny and furious and perfect. "It's a boy," the nurse announced, placing a squirming, bloody bundle on Wanda's chest for just a moment before whisking him away to be cleaned and checked. "Rest for a minute," the doctor instructed. "Then we'll do it again for baby number 2. Wanda barely had time to catch her breath before the contractions started again, harder this time, more painful. The second delivery felt endless, her body exhausted and struggling, alarms beeping somewhere as medical staff moved with increased urgency. "Come on, Wanda," Jessica urged, squeezing her hand. "You can do this. Just a little more." Another push, another scream, another cry joining the first. This one higher-pitched, more insistent. "It's a girl," the doctor said, relief evident in her tone. "You did it. You have twins." They placed both babies on Wanda's chest, skin to skin, their tiny bodies warm and alive against her. She looked down at them through tears, seeing Adam in every feature. The boy had his eyes, that exact shade of grey-blue. The girl had his nose, that slight upturn at the tip. Both had that distinctive shape to their ears that she'd kissed 1,000 times on their father's face. "Noah," she whispered, touching the boy's tiny hand. "And Ebony." She'd chosen the names carefully. Strong names. Names that meant something. Names that had nothing to do with Adam or his family or the life she'd left behind. "They're beautiful," Jessica said softly, standing beside the bed, tears in her own eyes. "Perfect." But they weren't perfect. They were fatherless. They would grow up with a gaping hole where Adam should have been, where his love and presence and support should have shaped them. Wanda held her children closer, protective and fierce despite her exhaustion. "I'm so sorry," she whispered to them. "I'm sorry your father is a coward. I'm sorry I couldn't make him love us enough. But I promise you this, you will never feel unwanted. You will never feel ordinary. You will know every single day that you are my entire world, that I would die for you, that nothing and no one will ever hurt you while I'm breathing." Noah's tiny hand curled around her finger. Ebony nuzzled against her chest, seeking warmth and comfort. They were hours old and already depending on her completely, trusting her absolutely. The weight of that trust settled over Wanda like armor. She wasn't just a heartbroken woman anymore. She wasn't just a billionaire CEO. She was a mother, and that changed everything. "We're going to be okay," she promised them, promised herself. "Better than okay. We're going to be extraordinary. And someday your father will see us and realize exactly what he threw away. But by then, it won't matter, because we'll be so far beyond him, he won't even be able to touch us." Through the hospital window, dawn broke over the city, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. A new day, a new beginning, a new life built on the ashes of the old one. Wanda closed her eyes, feeling her children's heartbeats against her own, and let herself believe that maybe, eventually, the pain would fade. That maybe someday she'd remember how to be whole again. But that day wasn't today. Today, she just held on and survived. Chapter 5. The Reckoning. Adam Salt adjusted his bow tie for the 3rd time, ignoring Lilith's annoyed sigh beside him. The annual International Medical Research Charity Gala was the event of the season, drawing pharmaceutical executives and medical innovators from around the globe. Normally, Adam would have been excited, networking opportunities combining with the chance to showcase Salt Industries' recent modest recovery. Tonight, he just felt tired. "Stop fidgeting," Lilith hissed, her manicured nails digging into his arm with more force than necessary. "You're embarrassing me." Everything embarrassed Lilith lately. His car wasn't new enough. His watch wasn't expensive enough. His company's recovery wasn't impressive enough. Their marriage had become a performance, beautiful on the surface and rotten underneath. And Adam was exhausted from playing his role. He thought about Wanda sometimes, late at night when Lilith slept beside him cold as marble. wondered where she'd gone, what she was doing, if she'd found someone new. The divorce had finalized quickly, cleanly, and she'd disappeared without a trace. Part of him felt relief. Another part, one he refused to examine too closely, felt something uncomfortably like regret. The ballroom glittered with chandeliers and designer gowns, champagne flowing freely among clusters of important people discussing important things. Adam grabbed a glass from a passing waiter, earning another disapproving look from Lilith. "You're drinking too much lately," she said, her voice pitched low but sharp enough to cut. "Control yourself!" Adam drained the glass in response, feeling petty satisfaction at her pursed lips. Their marriage had degraded into these small rebellions, these tiny ways of hurting each other because the big ways required too much energy. The lights dimmed, signaling the start of the evening's program. A man in an expensive suit took the stage, tapping the microphone. "Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Tonight, we're honored to have a very special guest, someone who has revolutionized pharmaceutical development and increased access to life-saving treatments worldwide. Please welcome our keynote speaker and this year's Humanitarian Award recipient, Wanda Peter, President and CEO of Peter Pharmaceuticals." The name hit Adam like a physical blow. Wanda, his Wanda, but that was impossible. His Wanda had been nobody, a simple researcher with no connections or money. This had to be someone different, a coincidence of names. Then she walked onto the stage, and Adam's champagne glass slipped from his nerveless fingers, shattering against the floor. She was magnificent. There was no other word for it. Wanda moved like royalty, wearing a gown that probably cost more than Adam's car, diamonds glittering at her throat and ears. Her natural hair was styled in an elegant updo, her makeup flawless, her posture radiating confidence and power. But it was her eyes that destroyed him, those same eyes he'd looked into on their wedding day. Except now they held something he'd never seen before, absolute certainty of her own worth. "That's her," Lilith breathed beside him, her voice tinged with something like awe. "Wanda Peter, she's worth billions. Built her company into one of the top 5 pharmaceutical giants in the world. How do you not know who she is?" Adam couldn't speak, couldn't breathe, couldn't process what he was seeing. Wanda began her speech, her voice carrying through the ballroom with natural authority. She spoke about innovation, about making medicine accessible, about refusing to let profit margins dictate who deserved to live and who deserved to die. The audience hung on her every word, and Adam heard the brilliance he'd once dismissed as meaningless research work, saw the passion he'd called ordinary, witnessed the extraordinary woman he'd thrown away. She'd been this person all along. She'd been wealthy beyond his imagination, powerful beyond his dreams, and she'd chosen to be with him anyway. She'd loved him enough to hide her fortune, to live simply, to be his equal instead of his superior, and he'd called her worthless. Midway through her speech, a woman brought 2 children onto the stage, beautiful little ones who couldn't have been more than toddlers. Twins, clearly, 1 boy and 1 girl. Wanda's face transformed when she saw them, cold authority melting into warmth and love. She lifted them onto her lap without missing a beat in her speech, the audience charmed by the humanizing moment. Adam stared at those children, something nagging at his mind. The boy had familiar eyes. The girl had a familiar nose. They looked like someone he knew, some resemblance he couldn't quite place. "How sweet," Lilith said dismissively. "Single mother trying to do it all. So exhausting to watch. Single mother." The words echoed in Adam's head. Wanda had children. When had that happened? How long after the divorce? Who was the father? Jealousy burned through him, caustic and irrational. Some other man had given Wanda children, had built a family with her, had gotten everything Adam had thrown away. Wanda finished her speech to thunderous applause, standing with a child in each arm, smiling graciously as the audience rose in a standing ovation. Her eyes swept the crowd, acknowledging the adoration, and then they landed on Adam. For exactly 2 seconds their gazes locked. Adam saw recognition flare in her expression, saw something that might have been pain flash across her features, saw her spine straighten even further. Then her face went completely blank, cold as winter, and she looked away from him like he was nothing, less than nothing, like he didn't exist. The dismissal cut deeper than any words could have. Adam had expected anger, hurt, some sign that he'd mattered to her. Instead, she'd looked at him the way she might look at a stain on her expensive carpet, unfortunate, forgettable, easily overlooked. "I need to talk to her," Adam said, already moving toward the stage. Lilith grabbed his arm. "What, why? Adam, what's wrong with you?" He shook her off, pushing through the crowd of people trying to congratulate Wanda. Important people. Powerful people. People who actually mattered in her world. Security personnel materialized around her like magic, dark-suited men with earpieces creating a protective barrier. Adam reached the edge of that barrier, close enough to call her name. "Wanda!" She heard him. He saw her shoulders stiffen, saw her hand tighten on the little girl's back. But she didn't turn around, didn't acknowledge him at all. Just continued her conversation with some foreign dignitary, laughing at something he said, holding her children like they were her shields against Adam's existence. "Sir, step back, please," one of the security guards said, his tone polite but firm. "I need to speak with Ms. Peter," Adam insisted, trying to move closer. "I know her. We used to be—" "Sir," the guard repeated, less polite now. "Step back, or you'll be removed from the venue." Adam watched helplessly as Wanda disappeared into the crowd, surrounded by admirers and business associates, her twins tucked safely against her. She never looked back, never gave him a single glance. He might as well have been invisible. Lilith found him standing there, humiliation burning his face, his entire world tilting sideways. "Do you know her?" Lilith demanded, suspicion sharpening her features. "Adam, do you know Wanda Peter?" "She was my wife," Adam said, his voice hollow. "That was my wife." Lilith's laugh was cruel and delighted. "That was your ex-wife? The nobody you left to marry me? Oh my God, Adam, you divorced a billionaire to marry me? You're even more pathetic than I thought." She walked away, probably to spread this delicious gossip through their social circle, probably to humiliate him further. Adam didn't care. He stood rooted to the spot, staring at the place where Wanda had been, trying to understand how everything he thought he knew had been a lie. She'd been wealthy all along, powerful all along. She'd chosen simplicity, chosen him, and he'd repaid that choice by calling her ordinary and leaving her for a woman with a fraction of Wanda's worth in every measurable way. And those children. Those beautiful children she held with such fierce protection. The boy's eyes haunted him. So familiar. Like looking in a mirror. Adam pulled out his phone with shaking hands, pulling up photos from the gala that were already hitting social media. He zoomed in on the twins, studying their faces with growing horror. The timeline clicked into place like a bomb detonating. If those children were around one or so, they would have been born roughly around the time of the divorce. Maybe after. Maybe during. Maybe Wanda had been pregnant when he left her. The thought made him physically ill. Adam stumbled to a bathroom, barely making it to a stall before vomiting, his body rejecting the possibility even as his mind calculated probabilities. Those could be his children. Those could be his son and daughter. And he'd never know, because Wanda Peter wouldn't look at him, wouldn't speak to him, wouldn't acknowledge his existence even for 2 seconds. He'd destroyed everything. For what? For a cold marriage and a struggling company and a life that felt like wearing someone else's skin. Adam gripped the sides of the toilet, forehead pressed against his arm, and finally understood the full weight of what he'd done. He'd thrown away everything that mattered, and getting it back might be impossible. Chapter 6. Chasing Ghosts. Adam hired a private investigator within hours of the gala, spending money he couldn't afford on answers he desperately needed. The report came back 3 days later, 20 pages of documentation that systematically destroyed every lie he'd told himself about his ex-wife. Wanda Peter, born to pharmaceutical titan Richard Peter and his wife Dorothy. sole heir to Peter Pharmaceuticals, a company worth billions, even before Wanda took control. She'd lived under her mother's maiden name during their marriage, working in research by choice, not necessity. She'd had access to unlimited wealth the entire time they were together and never mentioned it once. Adam sat in his home office, reading the report for the 5th time, each detail a knife twisting in his gut. There were photos included. Wanda at charity events as a teenager, wearing designer gowns, standing beside her father at pharmaceutical conferences. Wanda graduating from an elite university with multiple advanced degrees. Wanda's trust fund statements showing numbers that made Adam's eyes blur. She'd been extraordinary all along, and he'd called her ordinary. She'd been worth more than his entire family's legacy, and he'd left her for someone with a fraction of her wealth. She'd loved him enough to hide her fortune, to let him feel like an equal, to build a life based on who they were rather than what they had. And he'd thrown it away because his mother poisoned his mind and his ego demanded more. "What are you doing?" Lilith demanded from the doorway, her voice sharp with irritation. She'd been angry since the gala, since learning about Wanda, since realizing Adam had traded down to marry her. "Research," Adam said without looking up. "On your ex-wife. Are you serious right now?" Lilith's heels clicked against the hardwood as she stormed into the room. "She made you look like a fool, and you're obsessing over her?" "I made myself look like a fool," Adam corrected, finally meeting his wife's furious gaze. "Wanda just existed. That was enough." Lilith's slap came fast, her palm connecting with his cheek, hard enough to snap his head sideways. Adam touched his stinging face, feeling nothing but tired acceptance. "I want a divorce," Lilith said, her voice cold and final. "I didn't sign up to be married to a pathetic man pining after the one who got away. You're a disappointment, Adam. Your company is mediocre. Your ambition is pathetic, and frankly, you were never worth the effort my family put into saving you." She walked out, and Adam didn't try to stop her. He turned back to the report, back to photos of Wanda, back to trying to understand how he'd been so catastrophically blind. The investigator had included recent photos too. Wanda at her company headquarters, commanding and powerful. Wanda at various events, always surrounded by important people. And Wanda with her twins, candid shots caught by paparazzi cameras, showing her playing with them in a private park. Her face transformed by love and joy. Adam zoomed in on the children's faces, studying every feature obsessively. The boy had his eyes. He was certain now. That exact shade, that exact shape. The girl had his nose, his ears, his chin. They both had the small birthmark on their left temple that Adam had inherited from his father. Those were his children. He knew it with bone-deep certainty. Wanda had been pregnant when he divorced her, and she'd never told him. Had carried his babies alone, had given birth alone, had raised them alone, while he played happy families with Lilith. The guilt crushed him. Adam put his head in his hands and cried for the first time since childhood, great gasping sobs that shook his entire body. He'd abandoned his pregnant wife. He'd called her worthless, while his children grew inside her. He'd chosen status over love and lost everything that actually mattered. He had to talk to her, had to explain, apologize, beg forgiveness, had to find out the truth about those children. Adam called Peter Pharmaceuticals the next morning, asking to speak with Wanda. The receptionist was polite but firm. "I'm sorry, Ms. Peter doesn't take unsolicited calls. If you'd like to schedule a meeting, you can submit a request through our website." "This is personal, not business," Adam tried, desperation creeping into his voice. "Please just tell her Adam Salt called. She'll know who I am." A long pause. "One moment, sir." Hope flared in Adam's chest. Maybe she'd talk to him. Maybe she'd give him a chance to explain. The receptionist came back, her tone slightly cooler. "Ms. Peter has asked me to inform you that she has no interest in personal communication with you. Please don't call again." The line went dead. Adam tried calling back. The receptionist blocked his number. He tried calling from different phones. They recognized his voice and hung up. He tried emailing her directly, only to have his messages bounce back as blocked. She'd cut him off completely, efficiently, brutally. Desperate, Adam attended a pharmaceutical conference where Wanda was scheduled to speak. He sat in the back row, watching her present groundbreaking research with confidence and brilliance, seeing the woman he'd married shine in ways he'd never allowed himself to notice before. When the presentation ended, Adam fought through the crowd, trying to reach her before she left. Security spotted him first, two large men materializing at his elbows. "Mr. Salt," one said quietly, "Ms. Peter has requested that you not approach her. Please leave the venue." "I just need 5 minutes," Adam pleaded, not caring that people were staring. 5 minutes to apologize. "To explain. Leave now or we'll escort you out forcibly." Adam caught Wanda's eyes across the room. She stood watching him with her security team, her expression completely neutral, not a flicker of emotion visible. She looked at him the way someone might look at a stranger causing a scene, annoyed, uncomfortable, ready for him to be gone. Then she turned and walked away, disappearing through a side exit, taking any hope of conversation with her. The security guards physically removed Adam from the building, depositing him on the sidewalk like garbage. Humiliated and desperate, Adam sat on the curb and tried to figure out his next move. He started showing up at Peter Pharmaceuticals headquarters during lunch hours, hoping to catch Wanda coming or going. She never used the main entrance. He waited for hours, watching employees stream past. But Wanda remained invisible, probably exiting through private garages or secured areas he couldn't access. After a week of this, Wanda's head of security approached him directly. "Mr. Salt, you're making Miss Peter uncomfortable. She's asked me to inform you that if you continue this behavior, she'll pursue a restraining order. Go home, move on with your life." She has. The words cut like broken glass. She'd moved on. Of course she had. Why wouldn't she? He'd given her every reason to erase him from her memory. Adam wrote her a letter, pouring out everything he felt, every regret and realization. He sent it through his lawyer, thinking maybe official channels would work where personal ones failed. The letter came back a week later, shredded into confetti, placed carefully in an envelope with a note from Wanda's lawyer. "Ms. Peter has no interest in your attempts at communication. Cease all contact or face legal consequences." His marriage to Lilith officially ended with papers served by her lawyer. She was taking everything the prenup allowed, which wasn't much, since Adam had insisted on a prenup protecting his family assets. The irony wasn't lost on him. He'd been so certain he was the prize, so convinced his worth exceeded hers. He'd been wrong about everything. Salt Industries continued its slow decline despite Lilith's family investment. The company was hemorrhaging money, losing contracts, failing in every measurable way. Adam's family blamed him, his mother especially vicious in her criticism. "You had a billionaire," Margaret hissed during one particularly brutal family meeting. "You were married to the Peter Pharmaceutical heiress, and you left her? For Lilith Crane? Are you stupid or just catastrophically incompetent?" "You told me to leave her," Adam shot back, rage bubbling over. "You said she was worthless, ordinary, not good enough. You pushed Lilith on me. I didn't know she was secretly wealthy." Margaret shrieked. "If I'd known, I would have told you to get on your knees and worship her. You ruined us, Adam. You ruined everything." Adam walked out of the meeting, out of the building, out of his old life. He couldn't do this anymore. Couldn't pretend the company mattered. Couldn't pretend his family's approval mattered. Couldn't pretend anything mattered except the woman he'd destroyed and the children he'd abandoned without even knowing they existed. He spent his evenings researching Wanda obsessively, reading every article, watching every interview, collecting photos like a madman. The pictures of her twins haunted him most. Noah and Ebony, he learned their names from a magazine profile. They were growing so fast, changing from babies to toddlers, hitting milestones he wasn't there to witness. In one photo, Noah grinned at the camera with Adam's exact smile. In another, Ebony's laugh showed dimples Adam saw in his own mirror every morning. They were his. They had to be. The resemblance was too strong, the timeline too perfect. But Wanda wouldn't talk to him, wouldn't even acknowledge his existence. And without her cooperation, he had no way to prove paternity, no way to claim his children, no way to fix what he'd broken. Adam lay awake at night, staring at his ceiling, replaying every moment of his marriage to Wanda, seeing all the signs he'd missed. The way she never worried about money, but never flaunted it. The way she talked about research, like someone who understood the business side, not just the science. The way she carried herself with unconscious confidence, like someone born to lead. She'd been everything he'd ever needed, and he'd been too blind and arrogant to see it, too poisoned by his mother's bigotry and his own insecurities. Now she was untouchable, unreachable, and Adam was drowning in regret with no shore in sight. His phone buzzed with a news alert. Wanda Peter photographed at a children's charity event with twins Noah and Ebony Saltpeter, ages approaching 2 years old. Saltpeter. She'd given them his name. Even after everything, she'd given them his name, which meant she'd never hidden their paternity. She'd just hidden it from him specifically. Adam pulled up the photo, his vision blurring as he stared at his children's faces. They were beautiful, perfect, growing up without him. And it was his own fault, all his own fault. He had to find a way to make this right, had to find a way back to them. Even if Wanda never forgave him, even if she hated him forever, those children deserved to know their father, deserved to have him in their lives if he could somehow prove he was worthy. The question was how. How did you earn back something you'd thrown away? How did you prove you'd changed to someone who wouldn't even look at you? Adam didn't have answers. He only had determination and the growing certainty that he'd spend the rest of his life trying to fix this, even if it killed him. Chapter 7. The Fall. The business dinner should have been routine. Quarterly gathering of pharmaceutical executives and investors, networking disguised as social nicety, the usual performance of success and stability. Adam attended because he had to, because appearances still mattered even as everything crumbled around him. Lilith attended because she enjoyed these events, enjoyed being seen, enjoyed the performance. He should have known she'd choose this moment, should have seen it coming in the cruel smile she wore, the way she dressed to kill in red silk, the particular gleam in her eyes that meant someone was about to bleed. They were seated at a prominent table, surrounded by industry leaders and society fixtures, the kind of people whose opinions shaped reputations, whose gossip could destroy careers. Adam pushed food around his plate, only half listening to conversation, his mind on Wanda as always, on his children, on everything he'd lost. Lilith stood abruptly, her chair scraping loudly enough to draw attention. She tapped her knife against her champagne flute, the crystalline sound silencing nearby tables. "I'd like to make an announcement," she said, her voice carrying through the dining room with practiced projection. "Many of you know my husband Adam and I have had a challenging time lately. Well, I'm here to end that challenge by ending our marriage." Shocked murmurs rippled through the crowd. Adam's stomach dropped. "Lilith, don't," he said quietly, urgently. She ignored him, her smile widening. "You see, I made a terrible mistake marrying Adam. I thought he was ambitious, successful, worthy of my family's investment. Turns out he's just a mediocre man with a failing company and an obsession with his ex-wife." "Oh yes," she continued, warming to her subject as mortification burned Adam's face. "The brilliant Wanda Peter, the billionaire pharmaceutical queen. She was married to my husband first, and the fool left her, called her worthless, threw her away to marry me. Imagine that, trading a billionaire genius for—" She gestured at herself mockingly. "Well, for this." People were staring now, conversations at nearby tables dying as more guests tuned into the drama. "I'm filing for divorce immediately," Lilith announced. "Not that it matters financially, since Adam is essentially bankrupt. Salt Industries is failing, his family has disowned him, and honestly, he was never worth the effort. So if anyone is looking for a cautionary tale about male stupidity and wasted potential, I present my soon-to-be ex-husband, Idem Salt, the man who threw away perfection and ended up with absolutely nothing. She drained her champagne, set the glass down with deliberate care, and walked out of the dining room with her head held high, leaving Adam sitting in the wreckage of his reputation. The silence was deafening. Then whispers started multiplying like bacteria, spreading through the room with vicious speed. Adam felt every eye on him, every judgment, every delighted whisper about his humiliation. He stood on shaking legs, threw money on the table for his meal, and walked out as people's conversations followed him like knives. The divorce was swift and brutal. Lilith's lawyers were efficient, taking everything they legally could, which wasn't much but felt like everything anyway. She got the house. He got a studio apartment. She got the nice car. He got the old sedan. She got to keep her dignity and reputation. He got public humiliation and industry-wide gossip. Salt Industries declared bankruptcy 3 weeks later. His father officially dissolved the company, selling assets to cover debts, eliminating the family business that had existed for generations. Adam's parents blamed him entirely, his mother especially venomous. "You destroyed us," she said during their final conversation, her voice cold with hatred. "Everything we built, everything we worked for, gone because you're weak and stupid. Don't contact us again. You're not our son anymore." They cut him off financially, emotionally, completely. Adam moved into his tiny apartment with boxes of belongings that had seemed important once, and now just felt like reminders of failure. He couldn't find work in his field. His reputation preceded him everywhere. The story of his stupidity spread by Lilith's gleeful retelling. Companies wouldn't hire him for executive positions, couldn't risk the liability, couldn't trust his judgment. Adam took a position at a small university research lab. Entry-level work, barely above janitorial, filing reports and organizing data for actual scientists. The pay was terrible, the work was humbling, and he deserved every moment of it. His co-workers treated him with confused pity, knowing he'd once been somebody and was now nobody, unsure how to interact with a fallen man. Adam kept his head down and did his work, grateful to have any employment at all. But Wanda's face was everywhere. Magazine covers and checkout lines, billboard advertisements for Peter Pharmaceuticals, news articles about her company's latest breakthroughs, television interviews where she discussed medical innovation with commanding intelligence, and always, in many of the photos, her twins, Noah and Ebony, growing bigger, more distinct, more heartbreakingly familiar with every image Adam saw. He started keeping a folder on his laptop, collecting photos of them, studying their faces with obsessive intensity. The boy had his exact eyebrow arch. The girl had his exact lip shape. They both had that specific way of tilting their heads when listening, the same gesture Adam saw in his own childhood photos. One night, desperate for certainty, Adam created a timeline, wrote out dates with shaking hands, calculating and recalculating until the truth became undeniable. Divorce finalized. Count forward. Birth date of twins, based on their current appearances and public information. Count backward. Conception date. They'd still been married. She'd been pregnant during the divorce. He'd left his pregnant wife and she'd never said a word. Adam made a sound, somewhere between a laugh and a sob, his body folding over his small desk, hands pulling at his hair. Those were his children, his son, his daughter. Growing up without him, calling someone else daddy if they called anyone daddy at all. Living complete lives that didn't include their father because he'd been too blind and arrogant and poisoned to see what he had. He'd abandoned them before they were born, rejected them without knowing they existed. And Wanda had gone through pregnancy alone, labor alone, every milestone alone, because Adam had called her worthless and walked away. The guilt was crushing, physical. Adam couldn't breathe under the weight of it, couldn't see past the horror of his own actions. He'd destroyed everything that mattered, destroyed the woman he loved, destroyed his children's chance at having a father, destroyed any hope of redemption or forgiveness. He cried until he had nothing left, until his body was empty and hollowed out, until even tears wouldn't come anymore. But crying fixed nothing, regret fixed nothing. He'd made choices, catastrophic ones, and now he had to live in the consequences. Adam pulled up a photo of Noah and Ebony on his computer, really looking at them. They were beautiful, healthy, obviously well cared for and loved. Wanda had given them everything, been both mother and father, provided security and stability and everything children needed to thrive. She didn't need Adam, the twins didn't need Adam. He'd proven himself unworthy, untrustworthy, not fit to be part of their lives, but they were his blood, his children, his responsibility, even if he'd abdicated it. And whether Wanda liked it or not, whether she wanted him involved or not, he had rights as their biological father. Legal rights that couldn't be erased by his past mistakes. Adam knew what he had to do, even knowing it would hurt Wanda, even knowing she'd hate him more for it. He had to establish paternity legally, had to prove those children were his, had to fight for the right to be in their lives, because walking away again wasn't an option, even if staying away was what Wanda wanted. His hands shook as he searched for family lawyers, reading reviews, looking for someone who could help him navigate this nightmare. He couldn't afford expensive representation, but he'd spend his last dollar if it meant getting access to his children. This would be war. Wanda would fight him with every resource at her disposal. She'd make him suffer, make him pay, make him prove himself over and over. And he deserved all of it. But those children deserved to know their father, assuming he could become worthy of being known. They deserved the truth, deserved options, deserved more than growing up with the carefully edited story of why Daddy wasn't around. Adam pulled up the photo again, touching the screen gently where Noah's face smiled back at him. "I'm sorry," he whispered to the image, to his son, to the daughter beside him. "I'm so sorry I wasn't there. That I didn't know. That I was too stupid and proud to see what I had. But I'm here now. I'm not perfect, I'm not worthy, but I'm here. And I'm going to fight for you, even if you end up hating me for it. Even if your mother destroys me. You're my children, and I won't abandon you again." The promise felt sacred and terrifying in equal measure. Adam had lost everything that mattered. Now he had to somehow earn back even a fraction of it, one painful step at a time, against impossible odds. He thought about Wanda's face at the gala, the way she'd looked through him like he was invisible. Thought about her security removing him from conferences, her lawyers sending back his shredded letters, her complete and total rejection of his existence. She would never forgive him. That was clear. But maybe, someday, she'd tolerate him enough to let him be part of their children's lives. Maybe someday he'd earn the right to be called Daddy. Maybe someday the twins would know him as more than the man who abandoned their mother. It wasn't hope exactly. Hope felt too bright, too optimistic for the reality he faced. But it was something, a direction, a purpose that extended beyond his own destroyed life into something bigger and more important. His children existed. That fact couldn't be erased or ignored. And Adam would spend the rest of his life trying to be worthy of them, even knowing he might never succeed. Chapter 8, Facing the Truth. The family court building smelled like industrial cleaner and desperation. Adam sat on a hard bench outside the courtroom, his cheap suit wrinkled from the bus ride, his hands shaking despite his best efforts at composure. His lawyer, a kind older woman named Patricia, who'd taken his case for reduced fees after hearing his story, sat beside him reviewing notes. "Remember," Patricia said quietly, "stay calm no matter what happens in there. Don't get defensive. Don't get emotional. Just answer questions honestly and let me handle the legal arguments." Adam nodded, his throat too tight for words. Down the hall a door opened, and Wanda emerged with her legal team. 3 lawyers in expensive suits, all surrounding her like protective armor. She wore a charcoal business suit that probably cost more than Adam's monthly rent. Her hair pulled back severely, her face a mask of cold fury. Their eyes met across the hallway, and the hatred in her gaze nearly knocked him backward. This was the woman who'd once looked at him with love, with trust, with vulnerability. Now she looked at him like something she'd found stuck to her shoe. "Miss Peter," Patricia tried, approaching carefully. "Perhaps we could discuss this privately before going before the judge." "My client has nothing to discuss," one of Wanda's lawyers said sharply. Mr. Salt abandoned his pregnant wife. He has no moral or ethical right to these children, but potentially a legal one, Patricia countered. "Which is why we're here." Wanda still hadn't spoken, hadn't broken eye contact with Adam. When she finally did speak, her voice was ice and broken glass. "You will never be their father," she said, each word precisely enunciated. "You will never be part of their lives in any meaningful way. You threw us away. You don't get to come back when it's convenient." "Wanda," Adam started, his voice cracking. "Don't say my name," she cut him off, venom in every syllable. "You lost that right. You have no rights where I'm concerned, none." The bailiff called them into the courtroom before Adam could respond. They sat on opposite sides, miles of space and hurt between them, and waited for the judge to appear. Judge Morrison was a stern woman in her 60s who'd clearly seen every form of family dysfunction imaginable. She read through the petition with furrowed brows, occasionally glancing between Adam and Wanda with unreadable expression. "Mr. Salt, you're petitioning for paternity testing and potential custody of Noah and Ebony Saltpeter, is that correct?" Adam stood. "Yes, Your Honor. I have reason to believe I'm their biological father, and I want to be part of their lives." "Your Honor," Wanda's lead lawyer interjected, "Mr. Salt divorced Ms. Peter while she was pregnant, though he claims he didn't know about the pregnancy. He's had no contact with these children, provided no support, shown no interest until recently, when he discovered Ms. Peter's wealth and status." "That's not true," Adam said desperately. "I didn't know about them. I swear I didn't know. Did you ask?" Judge Morrison questioned, her tone sharp. "Did you check on your ex-wife after the divorce? Attempt contact? Show any interest in her well-being?" Adam's silence was damning. "Your Honor," Patricia intervened, "regardless of my client's past mistakes, if he is the biological father, he has legal rights to pursue a relationship with his children." Judge Morrison sighed heavily. "Unfortunately, you're correct. I'm ordering DNA testing for both children and Mr. Salt. Results will determine next steps. Court is adjourned until we have those results." The DNA testing happened at a clinical facility, cold and impersonal. Adam provided samples, watched as technicians swabbed inside his cheek, filled out forms with shaking hands. Somewhere else, Noah and Ebony were going through the same process, too young to understand why, probably scared and confused. The wait for results felt endless. Adam couldn't sleep, couldn't eat, could barely function. He went to work at the lab, filed his reports mechanically, and counted down hours until he'd know for certain. The results came back exactly as he'd known they would. Noah Saltpeter, 99.9% probability of paternity. Ebony Saltpeter, 99.9% probability of paternity. They were his. Legally, scientifically, undeniably his children. Adam sat in the courthouse bathroom and cried, overwhelmed by joy and grief in equal measure. He had children, beautiful, perfect children, and he'd missed everything. Every milestone, every moment, every precious day of their early lives, gone forever because of his own stupidity. The custody hearing was brutal. Wanda's lawyers painted Adam as an abandoner, a man who couldn't be trusted, someone who'd proven himself unworthy of fatherhood by his actions. They presented evidence of his financial instability, his professional failures, his public humiliation. They made him sound dangerous, unreliable, a threat to the twins' stability. Patricia countered with arguments about rehabilitation, about children deserving relationships with both parents, about legal rights that couldn't be dismissed because of past mistakes. Judge Morrison listened to everything, her expression grave, and finally rendered her decision. Mr. Salt is granted supervised visitation. 2 sessions weekly, 2 hours each. At an approved facility with a court-appointed supervisor present. Ms. Peter retains full legal and physical custody. Mr. Salt will pay child support proportionate to his income. We'll review this arrangement in 6 months to assess Mr. Salt's commitment and the children's well-being. It was something. Not much, but something. Adam nearly collapsed with relief. Wanda's face remained carved from stone, not a flicker of emotion visible. She stood, gathered her things, and walked out without looking at him once. The first supervised visit was scheduled for the following week. Adam arrived early at the facility, a cheerful room painted in primary colors, with toys and books scattered around. The supervisor, a grandmotherly woman named Helen, briefed him on rules. No physical discipline, no discussion of the custody situation, no attempts to turn the children against their mother. Just supervised interaction, carefully monitored. "They're very young," Helen warned gently. "They may not warm to you immediately. Be patient." Then Wanda arrived with Noah and Ebony, and Adam's heart stopped. They were bigger than in photos, more real, more perfect. Noah wore a little shirt with dinosaurs on it. Ebony had her hair in 2 puffs with colorful barrettes. They held their mother's hands, looking uncertain and small. "Noah, Ebony," Wanda said, her voice gentle with them, in ways it would never be with Adam again. "This is Adam. You're going to spend some time with him while Mommy waits outside. Miss Helen will be here the whole time, okay?" "Why?" Noah asked, his voice tiny, suspicious. "Because the judge said so," Wanda answered honestly. "You don't have to be scared. Just be yourselves." She kissed both their foreheads, gave Helen a long look that communicated volumes of protective warning, and sat in a chair across the room, far enough for privacy, but close enough to intervene if needed. She pulled out her tablet, not looking at Adam, making clear she'd give him his court-ordered time and not 1 second more. Adam knelt down to the twins' level, his heart hammering against his ribs. These were his children, his blood, his responsibility, and they looked at him like he was a stranger. Because he was. "Hi," he said softly, his voice breaking. "It's nice to meet you both." Ebony immediately hid behind Helen's legs. Noah stared at him with solemn eyes, Adam's eyes wary and uncertain. "Do you like dinosaurs?" Adam tried, gesturing to Noah's shirt. Noah didn't answer, just pressed closer to his sister. The 2 hours were torture. Adam tried everything. Offered toys they ignored, read books they wouldn't sit still for, ask questions they wouldn't answer. They sat together on the other side of the room, occasionally glancing at him with identical expressions of confusion and mistrust. Wanda never looked up from her tablet, but Adam could feel her awareness, her judgment, her satisfaction at seeing him fail. When the time ended, Noah and Ebony practically ran to their mother, burying their faces against her. She scooped them up effortlessly, whispering reassurances, and carried them out without acknowledging Adam's existence. "First meetings are often difficult," Helen said kindly, seeing Adam's devastation. "Give it time." But time meant more of the same. Week after week, Adam showed up for his supervised visits. Week after week, the twins remained distant, uncomfortable, treating him like an unwelcome intrusion. And week after week, Wanda sat across the room, radiating cold fury, never speaking to him, never looking at him, making clear exactly what she thought of his presence in their lives. After one particularly difficult session, where Ebony cried the entire time, Adam waited outside the facility, desperate to talk to Wanda. She emerged with the twins, already heading toward her car. "Wanda, please," he called out, not approaching but not letting her disappear either. "Can we just talk? 5 minutes. About the kids, about how to make this easier for them." She stopped, slowly turned to face him. The look in her eyes could have frozen oceans. "You want to make this easier for them?" she said, her voice dangerously quiet. "Here's how. Disappear. Go back to whatever hole you crawled out of. Let them forget you exist. That would be easiest for everyone." "They're my children," Adam said, trying to keep his voice steady. "I have a right to know them." "Rights," Wanda laughed, bitter and cutting. "You want to talk about rights?" You had the right to be their father from the moment they were conceived. You threw that right away when you called me worthless and walked out. You don't get to claim rights now because a judge signed a piece of paper. I made mistakes, Adam said desperately. Horrible, unforgivable mistakes. But I'm trying to fix them. I'm trying to be better, for them or for yourself. Wanda shot back. Are you here because you genuinely care about Noah and Ebony? Or are you here because your guilt finally caught up with you and you need absolution? Because I'm not giving you absolution, Adam, and neither will they. You're a stranger who makes them uncomfortable, and you always will be. She turned to leave. Adam took a step forward without thinking. I loved you, he said, the words ripping out of him. I still do. I was stupid and poisoned and wrong about everything, but I loved you. I love our children. Please, Wanda, please let me try. She stopped at her car, her back to him, her shoulders rigid. For a moment, Adam thought she might respond, might give him something, anything. Then she opened the car door, secured the twins in their car seats, and drove away without a single word. Adam stood in the parking lot until long after her car disappeared, until darkness fell and Helen gently suggested he go home, until he had no choice but to accept that this was his reality now. Court-ordered access to children who didn't want him, eternal hatred from the woman he'd destroyed, and no path forward that didn't hurt everyone involved. But he kept showing up. Every scheduled visit, he arrived early and stayed until the last possible second. He brought age-appropriate toys and books. He learned their favorite snacks. He sat patiently across from them, talking softly about nothing important, just trying to be a consistent presence. Noah warmed to him slightly after a few months, accepting a toy car Adam brought, occasionally answering a question with 1 or 2 words. Ebony remained wary, but she stopped crying when he entered the room. It was progress, infinitesimal but real. Wanda never softened, never spoke to him beyond logistical necessities, never gave any sign that she saw his efforts or cared about his changes. And Adam understood that this might be all he ever got. Supervised hours twice a week with children who might never truly accept him, and eternal punishment from the woman whose life he'd destroyed. It was far less than he deserved to hope for, but it was something, and he'd take something over nothing, even if it killed him slowly. Chapter 9. Breaking Through Stone. Time moved differently now, measured in supervised visits and small victories. Noah started calling him by name instead of avoiding him entirely. Ebony let him help her build block towers without flinching away from his hands. Progress came in drops instead of floods, but Adam clung to each drop like it was water in a desert. The twins were older now, their personalities emerging more clearly with each passing month. Noah was cautious and thoughtful, always observing before participating. Ebony was bold and expressive, her emotions written across her face in ways that reminded Adam painfully of Wanda. They were brilliant and beautiful and growing up before his eyes, and he was grateful for every moment he got with them, even knowing he'd miss so much more. But Wanda remained an immovable wall. She sat in that room twice a week, present but absent, allowing him his court-mandated time and not 1 second more. She never smiled at him, never spoke beyond absolute necessity, never gave any indication that his efforts mattered. Adam tried again. He had to try. One afternoon after a visit, he approached her carefully in the parking lot, keeping distance so she wouldn't feel threatened. Wanda, Noah mentioned he's starting preschool next month. I'd like to know which school, maybe help with supplies or tuition or whatever he needs. She didn't even look up from buckling Ebony into her car seat. Everything is handled. Your child support covers your contribution. Stay out of decisions that don't concern you. They're my children, Adam said, frustration creeping into his tone despite his best efforts. Their education concerns me. Now she looked at him, and the coldness in her eyes froze his blood. You have supervised visitation twice a week. You have no decision-making power, no input rights, no say in how I raise them. The judge was clear. Don't push me, or I'll have the arrangement reviewed, and you'll have even less access than you do now. She drove away before he could respond. Threat delivered, point made, door slammed again. First failed attempt at reconnection. Weeks later, the twins had a birthday approaching. Adam showed up at a visit with carefully wrapped presents. Books he'd researched to be age-appropriate and educational, a stuffed dinosaur for Noah, and an art set for Ebony, based on interests he'd carefully observed over months. These are for their birthday, he told Helen, who'd become something like a friend, an ally in his impossible quest. Can you make sure Wanda gets them? Helen called Wanda over from her usual chair. Wanda approached like she was walking through contaminated space, her expression radiating displeasure. Mr. Salt has birthday gifts for the children, Helen explained. Adam held out the presents, hopeful despite knowing better. I thought they might like these. Nothing expensive, just things I thought they'd enjoy. Wanda took the packages without looking at him. Fine, anything else? I was wondering if I could attend their birthday party, Adam said quickly, before courage failed. Just for an hour. I wouldn't intrude, wouldn't make it about me. I just want to be there for their special day. No, Wanda said flatly, no hesitation. Wanda, please. They're turning 3. I've already missed so much. And whose fault is that? She asked, her voice sharp enough to cut. You missed their first steps, their first words, their first everything because you threw me away while they were growing inside me. Now you want me to let you into their birthday celebration? Absolutely not. You get your supervised hours. That's all you're entitled to. She handed the presents back to him. Give these directly to them during your next visit. I don't want them thinking you're part of our family celebrations. You're not. Second failed attempt at reconnection. The rejection hurt, but Adam pressed forward. Months passed, and he noticed Wanda looking exhausted during visits, dark circles under her eyes, a tightness around her mouth that spoke of stress beyond their situation. Are you okay? He asked once, unable to stop himself despite knowing she'd shut him down. Don't pretend to care about me, she snapped. Your concern is unwelcome and unnecessary. I do care, Adam said quietly. I know you don't believe me, but I never stopped caring. Not really, Wanda laughed, harsh and humorless. You cared so much you called me worthless and married someone else within weeks. Your version of caring nearly destroyed me, Adam. I don't need it. I don't want it. Focus on the children and leave me alone. Third, failed attempt at reconnection. Adam started volunteering at a community center where he learned. Wanda's charitable foundation donated funds and resources. He didn't do it to impress her or manufacture encounters. He did it because he wanted to be better, wanted to be the kind of man his children could be proud of, wanted to contribute to something meaningful. Wanda showed up one day for a foundation site visit, freezing mid-step when she saw Adam helping set up tables for a children's literacy program. What are you doing here? She demanded, her voice tight with suspicion. Volunteering, Adam answered honestly. I teach a reading program on weekends. Have been for a few months now. This is my foundation's project, Wanda said, accusation clear in her tone. Are you following me? Trying to manipulate your way closer. I didn't know you'd be here today, Adam said, exhausted by her constant suspicion, even though he understood it. I just wanted to help. That's all. I'm allowed to volunteer, Wanda. I'm allowed to try to be better. She studied him for a long moment, searching for lies or manipulation. Whatever she saw didn't satisfy her. Stay away from me, she said coldly. I don't care what you do with your time, but don't use my foundation as an excuse to force interaction. We have nothing to say to each other. She conducted her site visit on the opposite side of the building, never looking in his direction again. Fourth failed attempt at reconnection, though he hadn't even been trying that time. Adam wrote her a letter on the twins' birthday, not trying to send it through official channels, just leaving it with Helen to pass along if Wanda was willing to accept it. The letter wasn't long, just heartfelt apology and acknowledgement of everything he'd destroyed, everything he'd learned, everything he wished he could undo. The letter came back unopened the next visit, handed to him by Helen with sympathetic eyes. She didn't even read it, Helen said gently. I'm sorry, Adam. She's not ready to hear from you. Will she ever be ready? Adam asked, already knowing the answer. Helen didn't have to respond. The silence said enough. Fifth failed attempt at reconnection, then everything changed. Adam was at work when his phone rang, an unknown number that he almost didn't answer. Something made him pick up. Mr. Salt? This is Helen from the visitation center. There's been an emergency with Noah. He's at County Hospital. Wanda asked me to inform you. Terror gripped Adam's chest. What happened? Is he okay? I don't have details, just that it's serious. You should get there. Adam ran, left work without explanation, took buses that felt impossibly slow, arrived at the hospital frantic and terrified. He found the pediatric wing, asked for Noah Saltpeter at the nurse's station, was directed to a family waiting area where Wanda sat alone, her face buried in her hands, her whole body shaking. Wanda, Adam said, and she looked up with eyes red from crying, mascara streaked, her carefully maintained composure completely shattered. He collapsed at preschool, she said, her voice breaking. Some kind of blood disorder, they think. He needs a transfusion, maybe multiple transfusions, but his blood type is rare. They're searching for matches, but it could take hours or days, and he doesn't have days, Adam. He doesn't have time. Adam sat beside her without asking permission, his own terror matching hers. What can I do? I'll give blood, donate whatever he needs. Tell me what to do. They're testing you now, Wanda said, wiping her face with shaking hands. They took samples when you arrived. If you're compatible, you could help him. If not, she couldn't finish the sentence, couldn't voice the possibility. They sat in silence. Two parents united in terror for their child, all their animosity temporarily forgotten in the face of something bigger than their destroyed marriage. A doctor emerged, and they both stood simultaneously. Mr. Salt, you're a match, the doctor said. We can use your blood for the immediate transfusion. It won't cure the underlying condition, but it will stabilize him while we run more tests and determine treatment. Take whatever you need, Adam said immediately. All of it if it helps him. The transfusion took hours. Adam lay in a medical bed, watching his blood flow through tubes toward his son, praying to whatever might be listening that this would be enough. Wanda sat in a chair nearby, not speaking, not looking at him, but present in a way she hadn't been in years. Thank you, she said finally, her voice small and broken. For coming, for helping. He's my son, Adam said simply. There's nothing I wouldn't do for him. For either of them. Wanda nodded, fresh tears sliding down her face. I know, I can see that now. I can see you've changed, that you're trying. She stopped, struggling with words. I just can't forgive you, Adam, I can't. What you did broke something in me that doesn't heal. And I'm sorry, because I know you want forgiveness, but I can't give it to you. I don't need forgiveness, Adam said, meaning it. I need you to let me be their father. Let me help when they need help. Let me be part of their lives in whatever small way you can tolerate. That's all I'm asking. Not forgiveness, not reconciliation. Just access to my children. Wanda studied him with exhausted eyes, seeing him maybe for the first time in years. Okay, she said finally, so quietly he almost missed it. Okay. They released Noah hours later. Diagnosis uncertain, but condition stabilized. Adam was allowed into the room, seeing his son small and pale in the hospital bed, tubes still attached, but alive and breathing. Hi, buddy, Adam said softly, taking Noah's tiny hand in his. You scared us. Adam, Noah's voice was weak but clear. You came? Of course I came, Adam said, his throat tight. I'll always come when you need me, always. Noah's fingers tightened around his. Mommy said you saved me, that your blood helped. We helped each other, Adam corrected. You're strong, Noah, so strong. Wanda stood in the doorway watching them, her expression complicated and painful. She wasn't smiling, wasn't softening completely, but something had shifted. Some wall had developed a tiny crack. When they discharged Noah, Wanda allowed Adam to help get him to the car, to see where they lived. even though she'd hidden that information for years. To follow them home and help settle Noah into bed, Ebony was there with a babysitter, throwing herself at Adam when she saw him. "You fixed Noah," she said, hugging his legs fiercely. "Mommy said you fixed him." Adam knelt down, hugging her back carefully. "I helped a little." But Noah fixed himself by being brave. He spent an hour with them, reading stories, making sure Noah was comfortable, being allowed into their home and their lives for the first time. When it was time to leave, Wanda walked him to the door. "This doesn't change everything," she said, her voice firm but not cruel. "I'm still angry, still hurt, still can't trust you completely, but I see you've changed. I see you love them. So I'm going to propose family dinners. Once a week here, supervised by me. You come, you eat with us, you leave. That's it. No more, no less." It was more than Adam had dared hope for. "Thank you," he managed, his voice thick with emotion. "Don't thank me," Wanda said, exhaustion making her honest. "I'm not doing this for you. I'm doing this for them. Because they deserve to know their father, assuming you keep proving yourself worthy. Which is not guaranteed, Adam. One mistake, one broken promise, and we're back to the visitation center." "Understand?" "I understand," Adam promised. "I won't let them down. I won't let you down." Wanda didn't respond, just closed the door gently, leaving Adam standing on her porch, feeling something dangerously close to hope for the first time in years. Chapter 10. The Long Road Home. Time passed, the way seasons change, slowly at first and then all at once. Sunday dinners became routine, a rhythm Adam built his entire week around. He arrived exactly on time, never early enough to seem pushy or late enough to seem unreliable. He brought simple contributions: fresh bread from the bakery near his apartment, flowers for the table that Ebony liked to arrange. Nothing expensive or showy, just consistent presence. The twins grew comfortable with him in increments. Noah started asking him questions about everything, his curious mind finding safety in Adam's patient answers. Ebony draped herself across his lap during after-dinner stories, trusting him with her weight and her attention. These moments were precious beyond measure, fragments of the fatherhood Adam had forfeited and was slowly, painfully earning back. Wanda remained guarded. She was civil during dinners, even occasionally smiled at something funny Noah said, or laughed when Ebony performed elaborate made-up dances. But she never smiled at Adam, never laughed with him. The wall between them had developed cracks, but remained fundamentally intact. Adam accepted this, had to accept it. He destroyed her trust so completely that rebuilding it might take the rest of his life, and even then might never fully succeed. So he focused on the twins, on being the father they deserved, on proving through actions rather than words that he'd changed. He advanced at the research lab, his dedication and brilliant mind finally recognized despite his tarnished reputation. The pay improved, his apartment upgraded slightly. Nothing approaching his old life, but stable enough to support child. Support payments and occasional gifts for Noah and Ebony. He lived modestly and was content. Then, crisis struck Wanda's world. Adam heard, through industry channels, about the hostile takeover attempt against Peter Pharmaceuticals. A massive corporation backed by international investors was buying up shares, spreading rumors about Wanda's management, attempting to force her out of the company her father had built. The attack was vicious and coordinated, the kind of corporate warfare that destroyed empires. Adam still had connections, people who remembered him from his old life, favors he'd earned through years of work. He spent 3 weeks making calls, sharing intelligence about the attacking corporation's vulnerabilities, connecting Wanda's team with investors who valued her vision. He worked late nights after his lab shifts, exhausted himself pursuing leads, asked for nothing in return. When the takeover failed spectacularly, Wanda's head of security traced much of their success back to Adam's assistance. A week later, Wanda called him directly for the first time in years, her voice professionally neutral. "Come to my office tomorrow, 2 o'clock. Adam's hands shook as he took the bus to her building, was escorted through security to executive floors he'd never seen, shown into an office bigger than his entire apartment. Wanda sat behind a massive desk, powerful and intimidating, every inch the billionaire CEO. "I know what you did," she said without preamble. "Why?" "Because it was right," Adam answered honestly. "Because you didn't deserve to lose what you'd built. I didn't expect anything in return." Wanda studied him for a long moment, her expression unreadable. "I'm not thanking you. I'm not forgiving you. What you did to me, to us, to our children, doesn't disappear because you made some phone calls." "I know," Adam said quietly. "I'm not asking for forgiveness, Wanda. I stopped expecting that years ago." "But I see you've changed," she continued, her voice softer now, more complex. "The children mention you constantly. Noah asked last week why you don't come to dinner more than once a week. Ebony drew a picture of our family, and you were in it." She paused, something flickering across her face. "That scared me, them seeing you as part of our family. But maybe they're right to. Maybe you've earned that, at least with them." Silence stretched between them, full of history and pain, and the faintest possibility of something else. "I'm not proposing anything dramatic," Wanda said finally. "I'm not saying we're reconciled or that I've forgiven you, because I haven't. The wound is still there, Adam. It probably always will be. But I'm willing to expand dinners to twice a week. You can attend some of their activities, school events, things like that. Supervised, always, with clear boundaries. This is about them, not us. Do you understand?" "I understand," Adam said, his throat tight. "Thank you for giving me this chance, for letting me be their father." "Don't thank me," Wanda said, echoing words from years ago. "Just keep showing up. Keep being reliable. One broken promise, Adam, and we're done. Completely done." He kept showing up. Through Noah's preschool graduation, where he sat 3 rows behind Wanda, but was there, witnessing. Through Ebony's first dance recital, where he brought flowers and made his daughter beam. Through countless small moments that built into something approaching normalcy. The walls between him and Wanda didn't crumble, but they lowered incrementally. She started asking his opinion occasionally about the twins' needs. Let him help with homework sometimes. Allowed him to take them to parks with her present, watching from a bench, but no longer hovering quite so protectively. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't love, but it was peace, fragile and hard-won. The school performance came on an ordinary Tuesday. Noah had a speaking part in a play about community helpers. Ebony was in the chorus, singing enthusiastically if not quite on key. Adam arrived early, finding a seat, and felt his heart stop when Wanda sat down beside him, not 3 rows away, not across the aisle. Beside him, with only 1 seat of space between them, they watched their children perform, both wearing expressions of fierce parental pride. When Noah delivered his lines perfectly, they exchanged a glance of shared joy. When Ebony waved excitedly from the stage, they both waved back. It felt like a family. Not a fixed one, not a whole one, but something real and present and possible. After the performance, they walked to the parking lot together, Noah holding Adam's hand and chattering about his performance, Ebony holding Wanda's hand and doing the same. They reached Wanda's car, and Adam prepared to say goodbye, as always. "They asked if you could come to dinner twice this week instead of once," Wanda said, not quite meeting his eyes. "I said I'd think about it." "What did you decide?" Adam asked carefully. "I'm still thinking," Wanda admitted. "This is hard for me, Adam. Letting you close feels dangerous. Like I'm setting myself up to be destroyed again." "I would never hurt you again," Adam said earnestly. "I swear it." "You can't promise that," Wanda countered, finally looking at him. "Nobody can promise that, but maybe that's okay. Maybe we don't need promises. Maybe we just need consistency, time, space to figure out what this looks like." She loaded the twins into the car, Adam helping with Ebony's seatbelt as he did now, their hands brushing in a way that felt less accidental than it once did. "Next Sunday," Wanda said through her open window. "Dinner come at 5 instead of 6. We'll see how it goes." It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't reconciliation. It wasn't love restored or marriage repaired. But it was movement forward instead of frozen. It was possibility where once there'd been only walls. Adam watched them drive away, his children's faces pressed against the back window waving goodbye, and felt something he hadn't felt in years settle into his chest. Not quite hope, not quite healing, but the sense that maybe someday, after years of proving himself, after consistent presence and earned trust, there might be something more than what they had now. Or maybe there wouldn't. Maybe this distant co-parenting with occasional moments of warmth was all they'd ever achieve. Either way, Adam would take it. Would show up every Sunday, every activity, every moment he was allowed. Would love his children fiercely and their mother carefully, respecting boundaries while slowly, painfully earning the right to stand closer to the family he'd once thrown away. The ending wasn't neat or certain. Real life rarely was. But it was honest and earned and infinitely better than the nothing he'd had before. And maybe, in time, that would be enough. Forgiveness, Wanda realized, wasn't about letting him back in. It was about finally letting herself be free.